How did the Human Life Review start?
Okay, so that's all about my dad, James P. McFadden. And he came to New York City in the 1950s to meet William F. Buckley Jr. because he had read God and Man at Yale. And he said, I want to meet this man. So he had just gotten out of intelligence in Germany, and he came straight to New York and met Bill Buckley, and he said, I want to work for this man. And so he joined National Review within a couple years after it started, and he was there for many years, and he got married, started having children, and he took on a lot of extra jobs because National Review didn't really pay as much as he needed for the family. And then in 1973, with the Roe v. Wade decision, he was shocked that the Supreme Court could do that. He was astounded, and it changed his life. He said it was a road to Damascus moment for him. So he came back, and he was on vacation when it happened. We were all in Florida, and he got the New York Times and saw the decision on the front page and was just flabbergasted. So when he got back to New York, he immediately talked to Bill and his colleagues at National Review and said he wanted to do something. And the first thing he did was set up a lobbying organization called the Ad Hoc Committee in Defense of Life. And then that was in 73. In 1974, he said what the pro-life movement really needs is a journal. Every good movement has a journal, a paper of record, and the best minds have to be aghast at this as well. How could brilliant people support, the killing of unborn children? So he set about creating a foundation, the Human Life Foundation, and he created two parallel missions. One is educational, and he founded the Human Life Review, the quarterly journal, which would have the best arguments, the best writers in support of life. And at the same time, he set up a charitable arm of the Human Life Foundation to start sending help to the pregnancy centers that were just then starting up. And he started raising money to make this happen. So he founded the Human Life Foundation in 1974, and our first issue was winter of 1975. He was a terrific direct mail writer, and over the years when he had to support his family, he did newsletter writing and direct mail writing for other organizations that he didn't really care about, but he knew he had to do that. And he felt like God was showing him, okay, now this is your cause, this is what you do care about, and you can take these skills that you've honed and put them into where your passion and your heart is. And from that day forward, he never took a real vacation again. He would take a couple days here and there, but that was his life from then on. And he actually, 1 month before my wedding, I got married in May of 1993, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, and he lived for 5 years with several cancers. He kept working if he wasn't in the hospital. He ended up not being able to talk. He had a feeding tube and a colostomy bag by the end, and he was still walking into work, working. And then we found out at one point the cancer was terminal, and he kept working. And the night before he died, we put the fall issue of the review, sent it to the printer, and I was working with him at the time, and my mother was also working with us because she was his full-time nurse assistant, and writer and editor herself. And I said goodbye to them, kissed them goodbye in the hall. We used to sublet still from National Review. And 4 o'clock in the morning, he got up to put something in his tube, and he had a massive hemorrhage, and he just died instantly.
Why do you think he worked till the end? Why was that so important to him?
Well, he was a soldier. He didn't see active combat, but he was very much a soldier, and it was important to him to keep going. I think for God and for what he had built up. as many people, especially that generation, fear being helpless in a hospital, you know. So he just wanted to keep going, and he cared so much about what he was doing and enjoyed it. And over the years, he was a very private man in many ways. He didn't travel, he didn't speak, he didn't have pictures of himself in things. He stayed behind his typewriter. But when he could talk, he had a wonderful voice. He loved to talk to people on the phone. He loved to take people to lunch, and he loved to write letters. And so he had a great community of people around the Human Life Foundation, many of whom he'd never met. They were letter friends, they were fax friends when fax came in, but they were dear and loving friends. And so he got an awful lot of support when he was battling his illnesses through those connections he made in the pro-life world of other both heroes, activists, and just, you know, regular people who came to know and love him. So I think he did it because he was principled, and also because he needed to, and also because it was good for him.
So as a little girl, like, what was that like, watching your father with such passion, working so hard for a cause that was affecting the whole world? How did that feel, looking up at him?
I think it's funny because I was always like a daddy's girl, so I looked up to everything he did. So when he would bring home books for me to read, like he brought home Wuthering Heights when I was in 5th grade. I was like, yes, and I loved it. I did love it. You know, when Roe v. Wade happened, I was probably 13. I can't remember. I was, you know, as many 13-year-olds are, I was really into, like, my own stuff. But I think it's really when I went away to college that I thought so much about his dedication, and, you know, I just admired him immensely. And I was able to have, you know, really terrific talks and discussions with him. That's one thing we always did as a family. We would talk and debate. So, and then seeing him struggle, it was as if so many of the pro-life issues were sort of embodied in him, because his quality of life, what they would say now, his quality of life was very difficult. You know, he couldn't talk, he couldn't eat, you know, for 5 years.
And
he
yet
was a gourmet
he
cook.
still worked.
He still worked. He still cooked for my mom. He still was an amazing cook. I don't know how, because he couldn't taste anything. He wrote jokes. He was a big punster. He wrote them down. So he was a real example of perseverance. And he wasn't a perfect man. He had his dark times and his very difficult times. But we always had a special connection. So I said to him, because by the time he died, he also had a Catholic newsletter. It's called Catholic Eye, and he was still doing a pro-life newsletter called Life Letter. So there were all these things, and I said, you know, Dad, I don't know, I don't think I can keep all of this going because I'm not you, but I will keep the Human Life Foundation going. And he'd always said that was what he wanted to go on, and so I told him that I would make sure it went on. So the link that we always had is still very much present. I feel it. As a matter of fact, after he died, you know, no one sat at his desk for a long time. Just couldn't. So it took a while, and we still have his royal typewriter in the office, and we still felt for a long time like we were still working for him because he was such a powerful personality. It's just that he wasn't physically present, but he was still in charge.